Sweetheart, the head tables are for people who matter. You can pour that somewhere. It won't embarrass anybody." The woman in the pale sundress did not answer. She held a paper cup of lemonade in one hand, loosely, the way a person holds something they have already forgotten. Around her, the command's hail and farewell cookout roared on. Grills hissed behind the pavilion. Children shrieked across the picnic grounds. Somewhere, a speaker leaked out a country song nobody was listening to. It was a bright, hot afternoon in early June, the kind of day the Army throws a party under, and 200 people were eating and laughing and pretending they were all equals for one Saturday. Colette Ashford was not pretending. Colette Ashford knew exactly where everyone stood. She stood at the top. She was 48 years old, in a linen dress that cost more than a private made in a month, and she had been watching this stranger for 10 minutes. The wrong shoes. Flat sandals. A dress off a clearance rack. No husband on her arm. No name tag. No reason to be standing this close to the tables, where the colonels and their wives sat. Help, Colette decided. Some caterer's girl who'd wandered up front. Or worse, some lieutenants +1 with ideas above her station. "I said," Colette repeated, louder, so the nearest table could enjoy it. "You don't belong up here." And then she tipped her wine glass. The red ran down the front of the pale cotton. It spread fast, a dark bloom over the woman's ribs, and dripped off the hem onto the grass. A full glass. Colette had a steady hand. Later, people would argue about how long the silence lasted. A second. 2. Long enough that the country song on the speaker finished a line and started another into a hush that had not been there before. A child near the grill asked its mother a question in the too loud voice of the very young, and the mother did not answer because the mother was watching the woman in the ruined dress, and so was everyone within 30 feet, waiting for the scene a pour drink is supposed to start. The scene did not come. The woman just looked at the stain and looked at Colette, and the not coming of the scene was somehow louder than any scene could have been. The woman did not step back. That was the thing Colette would remember later, when the whole world had turned over. The woman did not flinch, did not gasp, did not do any of the things a person does when cold wine hits their skin through thin fabric. She looked down at the stain the way you look at weather. Then she looked back up, and her face was perfectly, completely still. "It's only wine," the woman said. 3 words, flat and even. She set the paper cup down on the corner of the table without spilling a drop of the lemonade, which was somehow more unsettling than if she'd thrown it. 30 feet away, at the grill line, a man in a polo shirt with a high and tight going gray at the temples stopped moving. His name was Dermot Falk. He was 52 years old, and he was a command sergeant major, and he had been flipping burgers and letting the young sergeants think they were in charge of the fire. And now he had gone very still with the tongs in his hand. He had seen that stillness before. Once. On a road in another country that ate trucks whole. He knew the woman who owned it. He set the tongs down very carefully, like they might go off. At the drinks table, a young soldier in the serving detail had frozen with a tray half lifted. Specialist Marisol Duran, 21, 3 years in, still young enough to believe a colonel's wife was something close to God. She stared at the wine dripping off the stranger's hem and did not know what to do with her hands. Colette turned her back on the whole thing. The performance was over. She'd made her point. She smoothed her linen and floated back toward her circle of women at the good table, already narrating. The woman in the ruined dress stayed where she was. She did not leave. She did not complain. She did not look around for someone to tell. She simply stood there, dripping, and let her eyes move once across the grounds. The pavilion, the grill line, the parking lot beyond the tree break, the gate road, past that. One slow pass. The way a person counts exits out of habit they can't switch off. She had come to see how this post really ran. It was showing her. Marisol Duran finally got her feet to move, half a step toward the stranger, mouth open on an apology she didn't have the rank to give. But the crowd folded between them, and the moment closed, and the afternoon rolled on with its wine-stained secret, standing quietly in the middle of it. Falk did not go back to the grill. He stood at the fire with his arms crossed, watching the woman in the sundress, and his heart did a slow, cold thing in his chest that he had not felt in 19 years. The stranger did not perform. That was the second thing people would fail to notice until it was far too late. A lesser person, humiliated in front of 200 witnesses, would have found a way to be seen being wronged, would have raised her voice, would have looked for an officer, a rule, a name to invoke. The woman in the sundress did none of it. She picked up a stack of paper napkins from the drinks table, pressed them once against the worst of the stain, and set them down, folded. Then she stood and watched, and waited. And the watching was its own kind of work. It was Duran who cracked first. The young specialist came around the table too fast, off balance, and a tray of plastic cups went sideways in her hands. 12 cups. They would have hit the grass and scattered, and the whole detail would have laughed at her, and she was already one bad afternoon from tears. The stranger's hand was there before the tray finished tipping. One hand, flat under the edge. No fuss, no lunge, just there, steadying, the way a thing is steady that has never once been dropped. The cup settled, the tray leveled. Duran let out a breath she'd been holding since the wine. "Breathe," the woman said. "Reset the tray. You're fine." "Ma'am," Duran's voice wobbled. "You're soaked. You don't have to help me. You should—" "It'll dry," the woman nodded at the far end of the table. "Hand me the towels." 6 words, and the panic went out of the young soldier like water out of a tipped glass. Duran handed her the towels. The stranger wiped the table down in 4 passes, squared the cups, and stepped back into being no one. Duran watched her go still again, and could not make it fit. 10 seconds ago, this woman had steadied a falling tray with the back of one hand, and never once looked at it. Who did that? Who caught a thing without looking? Duran had a cousin who bartended and could pour 4 drinks blind, and it had taken him years, and this was not that. This was something else. "You've run a serving line before," the woman said. Not a question. Watching Duran reset the ice. "Yes, ma'am. Every drill weekend for a year." "It shows. You're squared away." A pause. "Don't let anybody tell you different today." It was a small thing to say. Duran would remember it for the rest of her life. Falk, 30 feet off, watched all of it and felt the cold thing in his chest tighten another turn. Then the grill went wrong. A propane regulator on one of the warming trays started to hiss. A thin, ugly sound under the party noise, the sound of gas going where gas should not. A wisp of it caught the heat, and there was a lick of flame along the tray line where there should not have been flame. The young sergeants at the fire took a step back, the reflex of men who had not yet learned that stepping back is not a plan. The woman in the sundress crossed the 10 feet before anyone finished flinching. She did not hurry. That was the thing. She moved fast, and she did not hurry, which are 2 different things that look the same only to people who have never watched someone do a hard job under real pressure. Valve. A quarter turn, hard, then off. She swept the burning tray clear of the propane line with the flat of a serving board, killed the fuel, killed the flame. 7 seconds, from hiss to silence, and she counted none of them out loud. She wiped her hands on the already ruined dress and stepped back. Regulators cracked, she said to the nearest sergeant, calm as a weather report. "Don't reseat it. Get a new one from supply. That whole tray line's done for the day." Then she went quiet again. Falk turned to the young sergeant beside him at the fire. His voice was low, and it had an edge in it the sergeant had never heard from the easygoing old man who ran their cookouts. "You see how she moved just then?" Falk said. "How she went straight at the gas instead of away from it? You don't learn that at a cookout, son. You don't learn that anywhere they hand out lemonade." The sergeant shrugged, because he had not seen it. Almost nobody had. Falk had spent 19 years around soldiers who moved fast and called it competence. Fast is not the same as calm. He had learned the difference on a road that took a truck and a corporal from him in the same 11 minutes. And he had learned it from watching one officer stay calm in the exact center of the worst noise he had ever heard. You do not forget a thing you learn that way. It gets into your hands. And he had just watched a woman in a wine-stained sundress kill a propane fire with that identical economy. Valve and tray, and done. No wasted motion. No announced heroics. And the recognition sat in his chest like a swallowed stone. He did not say her name. It was not his to say. But he stopped pretending to run the grill. Across the grounds, Colette Ashford had seen the little commotion, the smoke, the fuss, and drawn exactly the wrong conclusion. She assumed the stranger had caused it. Of course she had. What else did wandering help do but break things and get underfoot? She filed it away as one more reason the woman didn't belong, and went back to holding court. And the gap between what Colette Ashford saw and what Dermot Falk saw widened into the whole shape of the day. Colette did not let it go, because Colette never let anything go. That was, she would have told you proudly, why the Post ran the way it ran. She brought the stranger to her table like a story. The circle of senior wives leaned in, 4 of them, women who had spent their husbands' careers learning to want what Colette wanted. And she narrated the whole thing. The clearance rack dress, the flat sandals, the nerve of standing up front like she'd been invited. "Grant's command," Colette said, tilting her glass toward the pavilion where her husband's name hung on a banner. "My rules. You would not believe who thinks a summer dress buys them a seat at the good table. Honestly. Somebody's cleaning lady, probably, thinking nobody would notice." The circle laughed on cue. They always did. You have to understand how the circle worked, because the circle was the whole machine. There were 4 of them at the good table, wives of a lieutenant colonel, and 2 majors and a sergeant major. And every one of them had learned across a decade of moves and postings that the fastest way through an assignment was to want precisely what Colette Ashford wanted. Colette decided who was welcome at the spouse's coffee and who was quietly not. Colette decided which family got the casserole when a deployment ran long and which got a cool silence. It was petty power, the pettiest there is, and it was real. And it ran on exactly one thing: the eagle on her husband's collar. She had never once in 26 years had to ask whether the power was hers or only lent to her. Nobody had ever made her check. Somebody was about to. The laughter was the part that mattered, and the woman in the sundress heard it and did not react, and filed every face that made it. Then Colette found a better weapon than laughter. She found the serving detail. You. She snapped her fingers at Marisol Duran, who was refilling ice 10 feet away. Serving detail. Escort that woman off the grass. She's bothering the guests. Walk her to the parking lot. And if she won't go, get someone who'll make her. That's an order. Or did they stop teaching you how to follow those? Duran went pale. She looked at the stranger, the woman who 10 minutes ago had caught her falling tray and told her to breathe, and then at Colette, and the whole hierarchy of the afternoon pressed down on her 21-year-old shoulders. A colonel's wife had given her an order. She did not have the rank or the years to know that a colonel's wife cannot, in fact, give a soldier an order at all. "Ma'am," Duran started. She's not." The stranger stepped in before the young soldier had to choose. She stepped toward the parking lot on her own, unhurried, so that Duran would not have to lay a hand on anyone or defy anyone. She moved the whole crisis off the specialist's back and onto her own, and she did it so smoothly that only Falk understood what he'd just watched. A senior person taking a hit to cover a junior one, the oldest tell there is. As she passed Duran, close, she said it quietly, without breaking stride. "You didn't touch me. Remember that. Whatever happens next, you did right by me today." She walked toward the lot with wine drying stiff on her dress and her chin level, and she walked like the ground under her sandals belonged to her, because it did, though not one soul on that grass knew it yet. Falk moved to intercept her. He got 3 steps before a knot of guests swirled between them, and Colette's voice pulled the whole grounds back to her orbit. And by the time the crowd cleared, the woman was at the tree break, and the sergeant major was left standing with a certainty in his chest he could not yet say out loud. If you have ever stood in a room and watched a good person be treated as though they were nothing, watched people laugh and look away, and decide someone did not count, then you already know how this afternoon feels. Stay with it. The truth is 30 feet away and closing, and when it lands, it is going to rearrange every single person on this grass. Follow along, and if quiet strength is the kind of story you come here for, subscribe, because this channel is built on the moment the room finds out it was wrong. She walked toward the parking lot with wine drying on her dress, and every person who had laughed had just put themselves on a list they did not know existed. Colette followed her. She could not help it. A win only counts if you watch it land. She caught up at the edge of the lot, past the tree break, where the party noise dropped to a hum and the heat came up off the asphalt in waves. And there she found a better instrument than a serving detail. She found a roving military police patrol, a young private first class walking the perimeter of the event, radio on his shoulder, doing the most boring job on post. "Officer." Colette flagged him with a raised hand, the gesture of a woman used to being answered. "This person is harassing guests at a private command function. I want her removed from the installation. I want her trespassed. My husband is the garrison commander, Colonel Ashford, and he will back every single word I am telling you." The private looked at the woman in the sundress. She looked back at him, still unbothered, wine down her front and no expression at all. "Ma'am," he said carefully to the stranger, "I'm just going to need to confirm you've got a reason to be on the installation today. You got an ID on you?" "I have ID," the woman said. She reached into a small, flat clutch and produced a driver's license, a civilian license. She held it out, and the private took it, and he looked at the name and it meant nothing to him, because it was just a name, a woman's name. No rank, no unit, nothing. She had another card in that clutch, a card that would have ended the entire scene in 1 second flat, that would have put the young private at attention and sent the colonel's wife into the ground. She did not show it. She held her cover in place with the calm of a person choosing to, and only Falk, arriving now at a fast walk across the lot, understood that a choice was being made at all. "I have a reason to be here," she told the private, and left it exactly there. The private turned the license over in his fingers. Every instinct he had was pulling 2 directions at once. On one side stood a colonel's wife invoking a colonel, and a private first class learns in his first week that the space above him is not to be argued with. On the other side stood a calm woman who had done nothing he had personally witnessed except get wine poured on her, and something in the way she held still was making the back of his neck prickle. He had pulled enough gate duty to have met a general or 2 in civilian clothes. They all had this exact stillness. They all looked at you like they had already read your file. "Ma'am," he said again, quieter, "is there somebody I can call to confirm you?" "There is," she said, "but not yet." It was the strangest answer he had ever been given, and he did not know what to do with it. So he did nothing, which, though he would not learn this for another 20 minutes, was the smartest move of his young career. Colette pressed. "I want it written down. Her name. A trespass notice. I want a record that she was told to leave and that she is barred. Do your job." She wanted it in writing. She would get her wish. She would simply not get it the way she pictured it, because the only person on that asphalt building, a permanent, documented record of what was said and done, was a soldier trained to record exactly, standing 3 feet away, memorizing every word out of the colonel's wife's mouth. Falk reached them and stopped short, and something happened to his body that he could not fully stop. His heels drifted together, his shoulders came back, his chin leveled, not a full position of attention. He caught it halfway, strangled it. But anyone who knew what they were looking at would have seen a command sergeant major start to brace for a general and force himself to stand down. He looked at the woman in the sundress. His eyes were doing something complicated. She gave him the smallest shake of her head. A 1/4 inch, left and back. Not yet. And he obeyed her. 19 years since the last time he'd taken an order from her, and the reflex was still bolted to the floor of him. He obeyed. "Ma'am," Falk said. One word. It came out heavy as a footlocker. "Sergeant Major," the woman answered. She knew him. She'd said his rank like she'd said it 1,000 times. The private frowned, feeling the ground shift under a conversation he did not understand. Colette did not notice at all. Colette was still talking about trespass notices. Falk pulled the young MP aside, behind the pavilion, out of Colette's line of sight, and he did it with a hand on the private's shoulder that was gentle and completely immovable at once. "Son," Falk said, low, "put the pad away." "Sergeant Major, the colonel's wife asked me to—" "I know what she asked you." Falk's voice was quiet and level, and it had 30 years of hard roads in it. "Listen to me like your career depends on it, because it does. If you write one word on that trespass pad about that woman, it will be the last good day you have in this army. I'm not threatening you. I'm trying to save you. Walk it back. Lose the paperwork. Nobody down here outranks what's happening right now. Nobody." The private looked at the old man's face and decided wisely to believe him. He put the pad away. "Good man," Falk said, and meant it. He clapped the private once on the shoulder. "Now go stand by the gate road and forget you were ever down here. If anybody asks, you handled it. You did, actually. You just don't know how yet." The private went. Falk watched him go and let out a breath he'd been holding since the grill. He had spent the hour caught in the worst bind of his career, a general he would follow into any fire, standing in a parking lot while a civilian abused her and telling him with a look to do nothing. Every cell in his body had wanted to end it, to step in, to name her, to put the colonel's wife back on her heels with 3 words. And Keller had told him no, with a 1/4 inch shake of her head, because Keller wanted to see the whole thing, all the way to the bottom. So he had held. It was the hardest still he had ever stood. On the far side of the grounds, a different kind of alarm was moving. Captain Priya Anand, 31, was walking fast between the tables with a leather folder under her arm and a phone pressed to her ear, and her polished calm was coming apart at the seams. She was an aide-de-camp, and she had committed the aide-de-camp's cardinal sin. She had lost her general. The woman she was supposed to shadow had slipped her escort an hour ago with a quiet, "I want to see it before they clean it up for me," and vanished into a post full of strangers. Now Anand was hearing pieces of something at the edge of the cookout, second-hand, and the pieces were assembling into a nightmare. "Say that again," she said into the phone, stopping dead. "A civilian, in a sundress, wine on her, and someone's trying to trespass her off post?" Her face lost its color in real time. "Where? Which grounds? I need eyes on her right now." She started to run. And Colette Ashford. sensing in some animal way that she was losing control of the moment, that the strange, calm woman had not crumbled the way strangers were supposed to crumble, did the thing that people like Colette always do at exactly the wrong time. She doubled down. A member of her circle had caught up, nervous, and murmured that maybe Colette should let this one go, that the woman clearly wasn't worth the fuss. Colette rounded on her. Let it go. I do not let things go. She said it loud enough to carry. That is precisely why this post runs the way it runs. You give an inch on the grass, and you lose a mile in the mess. She does not belong here, and she is going to learn that, and everyone watching is going to learn it too. Behind her, unseen, the woman in the sundress watched Captain Anand's distant silhouette break into a run across the far side of the grounds, and she knew the quiet walk was over. Something crossed her face that was not anger. It was closer to regret. She had wanted to see the post as it was, unguarded. One honest afternoon before the salutes, and the sewers closed around her forever. She had gotten exactly that. It had simply cost more than she'd budgeted. If you have made it this far, stay for what comes next, because it is not what you think. The whole field is about to learn who she is, and what she does with it, after the wine, after the laughter, after the trespass notice, is the part almost nobody sees coming. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The reveal is close now. An aide-de-camp was sprinting toward the picnic grounds with a folder that would end every argument on that asphalt, and the commander's wife was making it worse with every sentence out of her mouth. Here is what the cookout did not know, and what you should. Her name was Rosalind Keller. Brigadier General Rosalind Keller. 1 star, United States Army. And the day after tomorrow was not the day after tomorrow at all. It was tomorrow, at 0900 hours, when she would stand on a reviewing stand 200 meters from that grill line and take command of the entire installation. Every soldier, and every acre, and every colonel on it, including the one whose wife had just poured wine down her dress. She had not been born to it. She had enlisted at 19, in 1996, a motor transport private who drove trucks because the recruiter said she could learn the rest later. She had learned the rest. Officer Candidate School at 24, Transportation Branch, Route Clearance and Convoy Operations, which is a clean phrase for the ugliest arithmetic in any war. The job of driving down roads that other people have promised are safe, and finding out, at 40 miles an hour, whether the promise was true. In the summer of 2007, she was a captain, 30 years old, running a resupply element down a route that every map in the headquarters had colored green. Green means cleared. Green means safe. The maps lied. The first truck went up at 11:40 in the morning. She could still tell you the minute. A wall of noise and dirt and heat. And then the next 90 seconds belonged entirely to whoever on that road could still think. Most people cannot think in the 90 seconds after the world ends. That is not a failing. It is simply how most people are built. Rosalind Keller could think. She had always been able to think in the bad 90 seconds. It was not courage exactly. She would tell you courage is what you call it afterward, when you are trying to make a clean story out of a thing that was not clean at all. In the moment, it was just work. There was a truck burning, and men inside the ring of it, and a set of decisions that had to be made in an order, and she made them in the order. And the fact that the air was full of noise, and the ground was full of holes, did not change the order. First the wounded, then the coil, then the fire, put where it counted and pulled where it didn't. Then the birds. She ran it like a checklist, because a checklist does not panic, and she had trained herself on 100 green roads that turned out green to have the checklist ready for the one that did not. The maps had said this one was clear. The maps are drawn by people who are not on the road. She got the surviving vehicles into a coil. She put fire where it needed to go and pulled it back where it didn't. She ran the casualty collection herself, on foot, across open ground, while the far side of the ambush kept trying to finish what it had started. Her platoon sergeant that day was a lean, furious sergeant first class named Dermot Falk, and the two of them held a dying convoy together with their bare hands and their voices for 11 minutes until the birds came. She made 4 trips across that open ground, carrying men who could not carry themselves. 4. Falk counted every one of them, and in 19 years he has never once stopped counting. You should know what 4 trips across open ground actually is, because the number is easy to say and hard to hold. It is not 4 heroic sprints. It is 4 times deciding to leave cover, on purpose, into the exact place the fire is coming from. Because a man is out there who cannot move himself, and the only vehicle for him is you. It is doing it once and living, and knowing the arithmetic gets worse each time you do it again, and doing it again anyway. Then a 3rd time. Then, when a sane person would have called it and let the last one go, a 4th. She was 30 years old. She weighed 140 pounds. 2 of the men she carried went north of 200 with their kit, and she carried them. And Falk, running the near side, screaming himself hoarse on the radio, watched a captain do a thing he did not think a human body could do 4 times, and something in him has belonged to her ever since. They did not all come home. Corporal Wesley Tran, 22 years old, held the far vehicle so that the others could break contact and move. He did his job perfectly, and it killed him. And there is no medal that fixes that math, though they gave her one anyway. A silver star for valor, for the 4 trips and the 11 minutes and the men who lived. She keeps it in a sock drawer, not on a wall, not in a frame. A drawer in the dark, because Wesley Tran does not get to keep anything, and it has never once seemed right to her that she should get to keep a bright thing for the day he stopped keeping everything. That is the woman standing in the parking lot with wine on her dress. That is why a 52-year-old command sergeant major went pale at a grill and stood at half attention on an asphalt lot and obeyed a shake of her head. He does not owe her respect. Respect is too small a word. He owes her the 19 years he has had since that road, every anniversary and every birthday and every ordinary Tuesday. And there is no wine stain on earth that could ever confuse a debt like that. The cookout thought she was the help. The help had carried men across open ground under fire and come back for more. Colette should have quit while she still had a self to save, but the woman would not scurry, would not cry, would not do any of the things that made a win feel like a win. And it drove Colette past the last line that separated bad manners from something the Army has actual words for. She turned on Marisol Duran, who had drifted back to the edge of the lot, unable to stay away. You. Colette's voice had gone shrill now, the polish cracking. I gave you an order. Grab her arm and walk her to the gate. Now, or I will have my husband end your little career before it starts. Do you understand me? He owns your future. One phone call. Duran stood very straight. She was 21, and she was terrified, and she did the bravest small thing a soldier can do. Ma'am, she said, I will not put my hands on her. For a moment, Colette simply could not process it. The refusal. The nerve of the refusal. And then, because some people cannot be stopped by anything but a wall, she did it herself. She seized Rosalind Keller's forearm and yanked. Guests gasped. The captain from the head table who'd half risen an hour ago was on his feet now, and moving, Falk was already moving. The whole edge of the cookout turned toward the sound of a woman grabbing a stranger, and for 1 second, the afternoon held its breath. Keller did not resist. She did not pull away. She did not do anything at all except look down at the manicured hand closed around her forearm, and then up at the face of the woman it belonged to, and, for the first time in the entire afternoon, she smiled. It was not a cruel smile. That was the terrible part. It was almost kind. It was the smile of a person who has just been handed, gift-wrapped, the exact thing that ends an argument for good, and who takes no pleasure in it, and knows the receiving of it cannot now be stopped. She reached over with her free hand and removed Colette's fingers from her arm, one at a time, without force, the way you'd unwrap something fragile. "You should let go of me now," Keller said quietly. "For your husband's sake, not mine." Colette's fingers had not fully let go, and Keller did not force them. She simply held the woman's gaze and waited, and the waiting was worse than any grip. Guests had gone quiet in a ring around them. The captain from the head table had reached the edge of it and stopped, uncertain, because the calm stranger did not look like a woman who needed rescuing. She looked like a woman standing exactly where she meant to stand. Falk had come to a halt 3 feet off, at an attention he was no longer trying to hide, and Colette, some animal part of her finally catching up to the room, felt the temperature of the whole afternoon change against her skin, and still could not make herself believe it, because believing it meant the ground was already gone from under her feet. Colette laughed, a high, disbelieving sound, but something had come into the woman's voice on the word husband, some weight that did not fit a caterer's girl, and it snagged in Colette's chest and would not pull loose. And across the grounds, a man in a colonel's summer uniform came around the pavilion at a fast walk, drawn by the noise, an aide half a step behind him. Colonel Grant Ashford, garrison commander, 49 days from the best assignment of his life, and about 4 seconds from the worst moment of it. Falk stepped back and let his heels come together at last. The trap was closed. Only the spring had not yet released. Colonel Ashford crossed the last 10 feet, already building an apology. He knew his wife. He had spent 26 years of marriage smoothing the edges of the things Colette did, and he came around that pavilion expecting exactly this. Colette in a fury at some civilian, a scene, a mess he would soothe and steer and clean up the way he always did. He had the apology half formed on his lips. "Sorry for the confusion. My wife gets protective. Let's all just—" Then he saw the woman's face, and every word he owned died in his throat. He had spent the last week with that face. It was in the incoming commander packet on his desk, the one his own staff had built, the biography, the official photograph, the career brief on the general who would own this post as of tomorrow morning. He had studied it. He had briefed his officers off it. He knew the line of that jaw and the level set of those eyes, the way you know a thing you have been told, over and over, matters more than anything else in your near future. The woman with wine down her dress was Brigadier General Rosalind Keller. His body understood it before his mind finished the sentence. His spine snapped straight. His heels found each other with a sound. His right hand came up and off and locked at the brow in a salute so fast and so hard it looked like a flinch. "General!" His voice broke on it, cracked clean down the middle. "General Keller." "Ma'am." The whole grounds went silent in a spreading ring. Colette laughed again, but it came out wrong now, thin and uncertain. "Grant. Grant, stop it. She's nobody. She's just the help. She saw her husband's face. She had been married to Grant Ashford for 26 years, and she had never once seen his face do what it was doing now. White. Rigid. Frightened, in a way she had not known he could be frightened. And in that face, She read the size of what she had done, all at once, the whole afternoon flipping over in a single second, and the blood went out of her cheeks and left her the color of the paper cups. Command Sergeant Major Dermot Falk stepped forward and came to full attention, and he said the thing he had held in his chest for 1 entire hour. Brigadier General Keller. His voice did not shake. He would not let it. Incoming senior commander of this installation. I served under this officer on the worst road I ever drove in my life. She carried my soldiers across open ground under fire 4 times. He let that land. He pulled, ma'am. And then Captain Priya Anand arrived at a near run, breathless, the leather folder clutched to her chest, and she pulled up short at the edge of the ring and took in the scene. The wine, the colonel at rigid attention, the ashen wife. And she closed her eyes for 1/2 second in pure professional agony before she stepped forward and made it official. General, I'm so sorry. You slipped the escort. Anand's words tumbled and then steadied. Ma'am, your assumption of command is confirmed for 0900 tomorrow. It's all here. She half lifted the folder. This is your post. As of 0900, all of it. For a long moment, nobody on the grass moved. The word general traveled outward through the crowd in a spreading murmur, table to table, and you could watch it land on face after face. The officers who straightened without deciding to, the wives who had laughed an hour ago and now could not find anywhere to put their eyes. The young soldiers of the serving detail who understood, suddenly and completely, that the woman their orders had tried to trespass off the grass would own every order any of them received starting tomorrow morning. Colonel Ashford's hand was still locked at his brow. He had not been told to drop it, and he was not going to drop it until he was. Sweat stood on his temple. Beside him, Colette was doing the math her husband had already finished. Nobody. She had called this woman nobody 4 times. 5. In front of 200 people. The help. She had said the help and poured wine down the front of the incoming commander of the entire installation and ordered a soldier to lay hands on her, and there was no version of the next 10 years, in this army, in this town, on this post, where any of that had not happened. It had happened. It would keep having happened for the rest of her life. She felt it close over her like water. Rosalind Keller looked around the silent grounds. 200 faces. The colonel frozen at the salute. The wife the color of ash. The young specialist with both hands pressed to her mouth. The captain who'd risen to help a stranger. The sergeant major standing like a monument to a road nobody here had driven. She let the silence sit for exactly 3 seconds. Then she spoke, and there was no triumph in it anywhere, none the eye could find. At ease, all of you. Her voice carried without rising. Colonel, put your hand down. Nobody on this grass is in trouble for the next 60 seconds. After that, she looked just once at Colette. We're going to have an honest afternoon. The commander's wife had poured her drink on the incoming commander of the entire post, and the only person on the grounds taking no pleasure in it at all was the general herself. There was no arrest. There was never going to be an arrest, and if you have been waiting for one, for the handcuffs, the shouted charges, the villain dragged across the grass, then you have misunderstood the woman in the sundress, which is all right, because everyone at the cookout misunderstood her too. Colette Ashford was a civilian. There was no rank to strip, no court to convene. And Rosalind Keller had buried a 22-year-old on a green road 19 years ago. And after that, a person learns the difference between the punishments that feel good and the ones that actually change something. She took Colonel Ashford aside first. Not for the crowd. She walked him 20 feet from the tables to the tree break, and she spoke to him low and even, and it was worse than any dressing down she could have delivered at volume. "I'm not going to end your career on my first day, Colonel," she said. "That would be easy, and it would let you off. You'd get to be the man it happened to. No. Here's what's going to happen. You are going to fix what your name has been used to do on this post. Every soldier your wife has ordered around like staff. Every family she's frozen out. Every young trooper who learned this afternoon that a colonel's wife can lay hands on a person and call it authority. You let that grow in your command because it was easier than a hard conversation at home. So you'll have the hard conversation now, and a great many more after it. You keep your command on notice, because making you fix this is worse than firing you, and we both know it." Grant Ashford, 49 days into the best assignment of his life, stood at attention in front of a woman half a foot shorter than him, and took it like the soldier he had, somewhere under 26 years of smoothing edges, once been. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "It stops today. It should have stopped a long time ago." "Yes," Keller agreed. "It should have." He held the salute the whole time because she had not released him, and she let him hold it a beat longer than comfort, before she said, quietly, "Put your hand down, Grant." The use of his first name was not warmth. It was worse than warmth. It was the sound of a person who has decided you are a problem to be managed rather than a peer to be angry with. And Grant Ashford, who had wanted to be a general his whole career and had just watched one walk out of a sundress, understood the difference precisely. Then she went to Colette. She did not have her removed. She did not shame her in front of the circle that had fed on her all afternoon. And the circle was watching now, hungry in a different direction, ready to turn on Colette the instant it was safe. Keller denied them the show. She stopped in front of the ashen woman and said one quiet thing, woman to woman, that would outlast any scene. "That authority you were throwing around all day," Keller said, "it was never yours. It was borrowed. Every ounce of it belonged to your husband's rank, and you spent it on a soldier who was worth 10 of the afternoon you were having. She's 21 years old, and she stood straighter than anyone here. I'd think about that. I think you'll be thinking about it for a while." She did not wait for an answer. There was nothing Colette could say, and both of them knew it. If you needed to see this today, if you needed to watch restraint win, watch someone hold every card and decline to burn the table down, then do me one favor. Drop a comment and tell me what it stirred. And subscribe to Honor Tales, because quiet strength winning quietly is the only thing this channel is about. Then Rosalind Keller crossed the grass in front of every silent guest and walked directly to Specialist Marisol Duran. The young soldier came to attention so fast she nearly fell over. Specialist Duran. Keller read the name off the tape on her chest and said it like it mattered, because it did. You were the only person on this entire lawn who did their job today. You were given an unlawful order twice by someone you'd been taught to fear, and you refused it. Twice because you knew it was wrong. That is the whole job. That's it. That's all of it. She almost smiled. Monday, 0800. My office. Bring that spine. I've got a use for people who keep their heads when the pressure comes on. Understood? Yes, ma'am, Duran whispered. And then, steadier. Yes, ma'am. The next morning came bright and hot again. At 0900, on the reviewing stand 200 meters from a grill that had long since gone cold, Brigadier General Rosalind Keller stood in her Army service uniform with the single silver star, bright on each shoulder, and took command of the installation. She wore no wine on this dress. She stood with the same stillness she'd stood with in the parking lot, the same economy, the same eyes that read a field in one pass. There was no memorial wall in it, no coded message from an old teammate overseas, no hook toward some next mission in some named country, just a general who had walked her post in a clearance rack sundress the day before because she wanted to see the truth of it before the salutes closed around her and hid the truth away, and who had seen exactly what her new command was made of, down to the grass. She found Falk's eyes across the formation. Command Sergeant Major Dermot Falk, standing where he had earned the right to stand. She gave him the smallest nod, a quarter inch. 19 years old. He returned it. Somewhere in the week that followed, the story would travel the way these stories travel. Down the ranks and across the spouses' tables and into the version everyone would tell for years. The day the new general got wine poured on her at the cookout and never raised her voice once. Some of the tellings would get the details wrong. The dress would change color. The number of trips across that old road would grow or shrink. But the shape of it would hold, because the shape was true, and the shape was this. A powerful person had every right to be cruel in return, and chose instead to be exact, and somehow the exactness landed harder than any cruelty could have. That was the lesson the Post learned that June. It did not need a memorial wall to remember it. She had gotten her honest afternoon after all. It had only cost her the disguise, and told her, in one wine-stained hour, everything she needed to know about the people she had just been given. Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to Honor Tales for more.